Welcome to New Thought Tuesdays.
Welcome to a domestic New Thought Tuesdays. That's not to say that we're going to talk about domestic servitude in the homes. We're both coming from the United States of America for the first time in weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm on the East Coast and Rich is on the West Coast. Welcome to New Thought Tuesdays, spiritual creatives. You're here today to discover the profound connection between what is referred to as Buddha mind and Christ consciousness. So that's what we're talking about today. And I'm excited to be here with Rich Smith to talk you through this and bring some of the New Thought Tuesdays ideas out using a bit of a frame of Buddhism, which is, we've been talking about this. I'm super excited. So, and how are you, Richard?
I'm doing great. Glad to be home.
Oh, yes.
What a trip that was, Costa Rica, in the jungle. We went on a jungle cruise and just saw a bunch of wildlife. Then at the very end, Madeline said, we saw everything except a snake. And then all of a sudden, the guide just slows the boat down and points up, and there's a snake, a boa wrapped around a tree branch above us.
Oh, boy.
So talk about manifestation on New Thought Tuesday. My daughter definitely manifested that.
So Rich, was this jungle cruise that you took in Costa Rica anything like the jungle cruise that you take in Anaheim at Disneyland?
No, actually, Madeline, who's taken it, said that it's very similar. They even got the smells down to the one on the ride. And compared to the real life thing, it smells the same. She goes, it just feels the same. The branches falling down over, the river. And it just was so good.
Oh, that's great. It looked like a wonderful time. It looked like a wonderful time.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Welcome to these United States of America.
Thanks.
So what about this? You were talking about, you had a little bit of a story about a Dharma talk that you were part of.
Yeah, basically, while I was there, we had this Dharma talk where we went and there were a bunch of people sitting around. This woman who was really insightful in Buddhism and how you can relate it to your life. And she was going through the Four Noble Truths. And she said something pretty profound after the jungle cruise. She said, we're the only species that can make a choice and have that choice, direct our lives in a certain way. And that just really was profound for me, because we're the only species that can do that, consciously make a choice. And that's what we're about on New Thought Tuesdays, consciously making choices in our life so that we can live a life filled with joy, happiness, success, abundance, all kinds of things, which leads me to Buddhism. So we're going to compare Buddhism with New Thought teachings, which I use mostly the Christ consciousness. So it's Buddha mind, Christ consciousness for me. And we'll talk about that today.
Great. It is an extraordinary, Dr. Mark Vieira, who's in North Hollywood Church of Religious Science in North Hollywood, he often says, and I love this, he said, the religions of the world, it's like they're all going up the same mountain. They get there in a different way, but for most of the religions, most of the spiritual practice, most of the spiritual revelation of the world, it's all going up the same mountain on its way up to the same height, the same peak. And that's why I love this idea that Buddhism and science of mind, or Buddhism and New Thought, we were reading through. There are two big aspects to Buddhism that we're going to look at today: the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And as Rich and I were discussing them and talking about them, going back and forth, there was such a sense of relief on my part. There was such a divine sense of delight as we went through them, because, well, first off, I love this stuff. And I also love to hear about it from a different perspective. And Buddhism brings a different perspective. It's bringing more of an Eastern perspective versus the Western perspective. Heck, I grew up in the Midwest of the United States of America. We're all about working on the farm and getting the work done and doing. A completely different sense with the Eastern philosophies.
Well, there's a belief that Christ, when he disappeared till he came back when he was in his early, 30s or 40s, all those years, there's a common belief that he was out in India studying with these gurus and at the Buddhist temples and stuff like that.
See,
I
don't know anything about that historically. But I whether that is accurate, and the man died at 30, was crucified at 33, wasn't he?
Was it 30?
33, that we can be aware of the same vibrations that are taking place in the world as our sensitivity, as our desire. So I can appreciate that the spiritual masters of our time are connected not geographically necessarily, but through that intention and that vibration. Now, this is kind of iffy, and it's very faith-based, but yes, I see the connection here when we're talking about the Eightfold Path, when we talk about the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah,
definitely a connection.
Let's talk about those, because that's what we're going to get into. And you're going to see the relationship going on here between the Buddhism and New Thought or Christ consciousness. So let's start with the first one. You had to look up how to pronounce it, right?
Hey, and anybody that is watching, we do not profess to be Buddhist experts. We are exploring this just like you guys are. And some of you will probably know much more about this kind of stuff. So put it into the comments. Tell us, give us your input, put it into the comments, like us, all that kind of stuff. But okay, so number one, so the Four Noble Truths. And I love the very English title of it as it's translated, the Four Noble Truths. Makes it very easy. Four. And the first of the four has to do with suffering. And that the first one is dukkha. Now, it may be dukkha, but I'm calling it dukkha, suffering. Dukkha. The first
in Boston, you say dukkha, you put an R in there, dukkha.
Dukkha. Go park your car. Dukkha. So the first noble truth related to suffering. And Buddhism sees this as that life is characterized by suffering and dissatisfaction and unsatisfactoriness, that there is suffering, and that it characterizes our life. I would not say that Science of Mind or New Thought starts off there, but it is like, okay, great. Let's go with this for a while. Let's be open. Let us get a sense of, okay, I've experienced, have you ever experienced suffering, Rich?
Yeah, of course. But in the New Thought teachings, right, it's the idea that change your thinking, change your life, change the world. What we talk about in New Thought Tuesdays, that you can release suffering by changing your thinking. Focus on what's good, not what's bad and not so good. Focus on what you want, vision for things you want, see your life how you want it to unfold, connect with infinite intelligence so that you can feel that presence within, the divine love within, and then your life starts to change. To me, that's New Thought Tuesday, Christ consciousness compared to Buddhism. So what does Buddhism say about the cessation of suffering?
Well, that brings us on to the second noble truth, samudaya, the origin of suffering. And they talk about the cause of suffering is desire or attachment that leads to craving and clinging.
And we're going to get into that too after our 20-minute program. We're going to talk about, as creators in the entertainment, how are we suffering? What attachments do we have to the outcome? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk how you can break through.
That's part of our discussion today in the inner circle, the non-recorded section where we all get together to discuss what the topic is today. What in our creative lives is causing us suffering, or how in our creative lives are we causing suffering through our desire or attachment that we are brings us to craving and clinging. All right, so we're talking about first noble truth, dukkha, talking about suffering. It starts the topic on suffering, and the second, samudaya, going to get that right, samudaya, the cause of suffering is desire or attaching. So it says first there's suffering, and second, there's cause of suffering is desire or attachment. It goes on to naroda, cessation of suffering. So there is suffering, that the cause of suffering is attachment, and this, you can stop the suffering by stopping the desire and the attachment. So there is suffering. It's because of desire and attachment. And third, you can cease it by releasing that desire and attachment. Now, when we talk in the inner circle today, we're going to talk a lot about attachment and releasing attachment and how they work in the creative industry and are in our lives. So that's the third naroda. We move on then to the fourth noble truth, magga, path. This is the path to the cessation of suffering. Now, it's like, whenever there's a definition, it'll say, it'll give you most of it, and then it'll say, see footnote at the bottom of the page for more information. This is kind of the fourth noble truth, basically says, see footnote at the bottom of the page for more information, because it says the fourth noble truth is use the eightfold path to stop your suffering. So there are four noble truths. First, there is suffering. The second is suffering is caused by desire or attachment. The third is you can stop desire or attachment by stopping. You can stop suffering by stopping desire or attachment. The fourth is see the eightfold path.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's start with it. Okay, the first of the eightfold path is developing an understanding of the Four Noble Truths and the nature of reality. We talked about that. Now let's go to the second one, Dean.
So okay, but I want to start in on some of the literary punctuation of this. Okay. We're going to go, but first path is right view. Right view. That's what we're talking about. Developing an understanding of the Four Noble Truths and its reality. So that's what, like you say, that's what it says, the right view. See the noble truths above. Okay, great. The Four Noble Truths above, which said, see the eightfold path below. Okay, great. Right view. What's the second one? Right what?
The second one is right intention.
Right intention.
What is your intention and your attitudes towards the thing that you're suffering about? Whatever that is, whatever's causing you the suffering, your attachment to whatever it is. Okay. So what's the intention and the attitude that you have? For me, on New Thought Tuesdays and on New Thought teachings, the intention is to live a peaceful, harmonious life where everything in my life unfolds in perfect order. And to do that, I have to release some attachments to the way I think things should work out and open up to the way the universe, infinite intelligence, life unfolds and how my life is unfolding perfectly. Connect with that. And so for me, that's what the right intention is. What is your intention?
It is not just the idea of the intention about that from that which you are suffering, but that which you are not suffering about. Cultivating that. Cultivating, which means you can choose, you've got volition, choosing your intentions and attitudes from a place of wholesomeness, a place that truly is positive for your own expression. The third one, right speech. So it talks of the eightfold path. The third path is right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, generously, avoiding any kind of harmful speech.
And relating to New Thought teachings and the law of attraction, okay, what you speak about, you bring about. You know, in my Infinite Filmmaker teachings, I always say that, you know, in the beginning, in the Bible, it says in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word is God, and the words that we speak have the power to create. So for me, that the relationship between New Thought teachings and Buddhism, right speech, the third eightfold path, is speak about what you want to create, talk about it, think about it, act upon it, and then it will manifest. So how do you relate to that?
We can go to 4 next, because we're actually coming up on our time here, but and we will be talking about this more in the inner circle, as we said before. Number four, right action. So you've got right view, right intention, right speech, right action. Right action, acting ethically, avoiding harm to yourself and to others. Makes sense to me. Does that contradict any New Thought, any Science of Mind teachings?
No,
Nope.
even the teachings of Christ and Christ consciousness was do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. Right
action. Number 5. And I'm going to put all of these in the chat for those of you who are here today. Number 5.
Right livelihood.
Right livelihood.
Engage in a livelihood that's honest and beneficial. Are you doing what you're meant to be doing, or you're trying to be doing, have what everybody else does and has?
Yep. Right livelihood. Engaging in that stuff that's honest and beneficial.
What does livelihood mean to you, Dean? Right livelihood.
Right livelihood.
As somebody creative in the music industry.
Well, see, there's a cadence. Now you can look at the word right and see it as judgmental or exacting. I see it as flowing, as this livelihood, this musicality to life, that there are possibilities and choices and experiences and opportunities in everything, including where we don't see them. And that there is, if you have a right view, a right intention, use right speech, right action, when you're experiencing and expressing right livelihood, there is a lilt quality. There's a musical quality to life in all that you are thinking, doing, and saying. Yeah. And it just you just talk about the word lively in this English translation, livelihood. Love it.
Live.
Yep. So now number 6, right effort. So making a conscious and sustained, so persistent and conscious effort to cultivate wisdom and qualities of joy and to abandon all unwholesome ones. And you can take this by what other people will determine, but I would encourage from a New Thought Tuesday's perspective that these determinations of wholesomeness are all internal for you. What is your sense of wholesomeness? And follow those choices. Use your own volition for that right effort, and abandon all those that do not reflect your assessment of wholesomeness.
To me, wholesomeness is when I'm creating joy and passion in my life.
Joy and
That's to me is being a wholesome, living a wholesome life. Is does this bring me joy, or does it bring me sorrow? Does it bring me aliveness, or does it bring me kind of a feeling of death? Does it
And
bring
I
joy?
look forward.
That's
I look
that's
forward
how
to talking about this whole this wholesomeness as related to creative ideas in our inner circle today, because I have a different sense of wholesomeness. It's not conflicting with yours. It's just mine is articulated in a different way than yours is, as it is with all of us, I would believe. And I look forward to talking about some of the stories in our conversation. But let's move on to number 7. Boing. Right mindfulness. Cultivating awareness and being fully present in the present moment. I love to read stuff like that, because whenever I read it, it reminds me one more time to just be in this present moment with you right here and know that it is perfect. And it almost makes me weep with being moved, the feeling of being moved by being mindful, consciously cultivating that mindfulness. Brings us to the last and final of the Eightfold Path, because there are 8 on the Eightfold Path. Hit it, Richard.
right concentration, developing focused and meditative states of mind to gain insight and wisdom. And we're going to talk about that meditation. And yeah.
So here we go. As we go. Oh, and folks, if you want to be part of our conversation, our vibrant community of creative individual conversation, you can go to newthoughttuesdays.com and click on yes, I want to be reminded, and we will send you a very gentle email with the link for our Zoom meeting, and you'll come into the Zoom meeting, and we record the beginning part, but nobody else is part of that. And then we bring everybody else into the conversation. So our conversation today is going to be on the relation of the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. The 4 Noble Truths having to do with suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to that cessation, and the Eightfold Path being right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And this is the second time I've spoken these out loud. Rich and I were meeting earlier, and each time just reading them aloud brings me into a sense of alignment, and I celebrate that alignment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Anything else before we move off, Mr. Smith?
No, I'm really excited. Dean and I have been doing this work for years and years and years, and we've got a lot of secrets and to share with you in the inner circle to help you understand these eightfold truths from our perspective, from a New Thought perspective.
Yep. That's what we're going to do.
Forward to it.
So
very excited.
We are looking forward to it. We're going to stop the recordings and say goodbye to the folks on social media tuning into us after the fact, and we look forward to seeing you in the present moment next Tuesday.
Okay, we'll see you then.